Welcome to On the Go with AAUW, the American Association of University Women. I'm your host, Jennifer DeSanto, the Executive Director of the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute at George Mason University. And today our guests are from Volunteer Fairfax, a nonprofit in Fairfax County. Our guests are the Executive Director, Steve Muddy, and the Program Manager, Kim Luckaba. Welcome, Steve and Kim.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you
so much for having us.
Oh, I'm so happy you were able to make it onto the show. Volunteer Fairfax is very well known in our county. You've been around for 45 years. Its mission is fantastic, helping people connect with volunteering and organizations connect to find volunteers. Before we begin and jump into that, I'd like to learn a little bit about each of you. Steve, you're the CEO, but you're new to the job.
Yes,
and
I am.
we'll talk to you first about maybe a little bit of your background and how you came to be interested in this organization.
Sure, Jennifer. I'm 4 months into the job now. In my prior life, I was in the corporate world for about 35 years in the commercial real estate business, practicing in this area, and jumped over in 2015 to the nonprofit side, serving communities, and I've been a volunteer my entire life. This is really my 51st year of volunteering. My focus, throughout my life has been with young people with intellectual disabilities and generally disadvantaged young people. And so that led me to Volunteer Fairfax, where I would have the opportunity to lead an organization that places a lot of volunteer capacity to needs out in the community related to some of the things that I'm very passionate about.
Yes.
Exactly.
Very good. And Kim, you're also a lifelong volunteer.
I am. I tell people I cut my teeth on volunteering, starting when I was just a preschooler with the fire department out in Ashburn. My great-grandfather was a founding member of the volunteer department, so I started with folding napkins and working with flatware and serving beverages for the dinners, the ham and oyster dinners that we had out there then. That became a part of my makeup. My family instilled that value in me, so I grew up volunteering through the church, through my high school years, my young adulthood, and then as a mom with the children growing up, and now they're all high school and going into college, and it's a value that I've instilled in them, the importance of giving back to the community around them.
And you do this for a living now, and you're program managing many programs with Volunteer Fairfax.
I am, and it is actually a real pleasure to do that, to be able to do something I enjoy greatly, that I feel is so rewarding and so important, and be able to give back at the same time that I'm doing it, to make that difference. To know that what my job is helps the community, it's very rewarding, very fulfilling.
That's wonderful. Now, the mission of the organization, can you give us a little bit of a sampling of what the mission is, and then we'll drill down and talk about specific programs and other things that you offer?
Sure. I would put, if you put it in one sentence, I'd say that we're working to strengthen communities in Fairfax County by matching volunteer resources and capacity to the actual needs that are out in the county. We do this in a variety of ways, electronically, person to person. We recruit, we identify needs out there through our various partners throughout the county, and then we make the match.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned earlier you had a seed of volunteerism that was planted in you as a child, and I think that's also sort of what Volunteer Fairfax is trying to do community-wide. If you want a good community, I always say, you make it what it is. You put your effort into it, and then you get to reap the rewards of that. And with the programming that you're putting together, you're creating these opportunities for individuals as well as other organizations to create opportunities for these volunteer efforts.
Absolutely. One of the things that we're doing is we try to bring all of our generations together, all of our communities together. It's so important because we do live in a diverse community, and we want to not just live in the community, get together, but to serve each other together, to grow together, to strengthen that community. And we do that through a variety of programs and opportunities that will help do just that. And we engage the young people, the seniors, the busy professional, the students, and just everything in between.
Well, let's start with the young people. So let's start with the youngest people.
Yeah.
What is the first introduction that you have for, say, pre-K to maybe 6th grade?
we had some really cute and really unique ways to connect the kids in. Some people don't realize that little people can do things too. So we've actually engaged with a faith-based organization here locally, and we're actually connecting volunteers and families to help serve, to make sandwiches and meals for the homeless. We just also held an event back on Martin Luther King Day weekend with a couple of different opportunities where we had children making Valentines for kids in foster care. We had another piece of that whole weekend where children were able to go from station to station and make dog chew toys and little hypothermia kit packs and things that they can assemble kits and packs of things that will help minister and serve others in the community.
And I think the activity that brings families together is not just for today. It certainly has an impact today in strengthening the community, strengthening families. But it also is the whole activity of volunteerism is an investment in the future. So it's really promoting, it's finding a way to pass the volunteerism ethic from one generation to the next. These activities are designed to do that as much as serve for today. So.
And I know that schools often are trying to create these opportunities through required service, say middle schoolers. What kinds of opportunities are there for middle school aged children?
We actually have a service directory on our website, volunteerfairfax.org. They can click on the individuals tab and then just for youth. And under that tab, there is a link for a youth services directory that they can search by age, by mission area, and by location, like what part of the county. And there's all kinds of great opportunities, whether it's environmental, whether it's working with hunger, animals for some of the older kids, food pantries, all kinds of ways that they can actually serve in that community. Even some of the cancer-related organizations, there's a lot of those clubs in the schools. That's another great way to plug in and help others.
I really like any program that is catching kids at the middle school age, because that is really, those being such formative years, promoting that ethic of volunteerism before they get to the point where they're in high school and they're thinking about college, and the focus shifts to what is known as check the box volunteerism.
Yes.
And so if you can catch them before that and instill why it's important for them to do volunteerism as an investment in the communities that they're eventually going to inherit, that's the time to really catch them.
And they're innovative too.
Certainly.
Yes.
They're very innovative. I've seen them organize not just food drives, but clothing drives and things for the animals in the shelters. I've seen sock drives for the homeless. They are very creative and resourceful in what they're doing.
It's nice that you create opportunities for them to be creative.
Definitely.
But let's stay with that age group just for a moment, because there's something unique that happens in Fairfax County for kids that are in middle school, which is this financial understanding of financial responsibilities. They go to the finance park, the one over off of Pickett Road in particular, where you actually have grown-ups that can come in and volunteer to help the junior high school kids learn about the programs, about financial literacy, and through that program, through the finance park.
Right, and so that's an example of one of many programs that really tap into specific talents of volunteers. That we're in one of the most highly educated counties in the United States, and we don't want to underestimate the capacity of potential volunteers to be able to work with all age groups and use their specific financial talents or whatever those may be. There are engineers, there are scientists out there, and they're all at points in their life and in their career where they're very eager to use their talents to better the community.
And these are the working professionals usually, right? And so how, if I say, for example, I wanted to sign up and help in some capacity, do I go to your website? Do I fill out a form? How do I do that?
You go to volunteerfairfax.org, and I hope that'll be flashing up here on the screen at some point. And you can register, and it will ask you a series of questions, and you can indicate what your talents are, a geographical area that you'd like to work in, and then you can either let the system do the work to make a match, or there are ways that you can connect with a real person who can guide you through that. And there are different age groups, and one in particular that's of particular focus to us, over 55, is they prefer, that generation, and I'm one of that generation, prefers more person-to-person contact. And so we make that available so that matches can be made in that way if somebody is not comfortable or not proficient using the computer.
So you have actually a special program called RSVP, which is solely working with the 55+ community. You want to elaborate on that?
Sure, it stands for Retired Senior Volunteer Program, and this is operated through a federal grant. And this is very unique because the federal government really does understand the needs of our seniors in this regard. It keeps our seniors engaged, involved, mentally alert, physically active, and much healthier, and it keeps them involved in their community. So that piece of loneliness that can come in when some of our seniors are becoming more isolated by not leaving their homes, this is keeping them engaged in that community to build those relationships, to continue staying connected to their community and to others around them.
And I know recently you had some specific events. So as you know, I run the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute at George Mason University, which is a 55+ program. And a number of our senior volunteers who are in particular in our photography group have gone to support a variety of Fairfax, volunteer Fairfax events. One was the Martin Luther King Day, Special Olympics, Senior Olympics, and a variety of others. Do you want to talk about how that collaboration works?
It's so unique. We're able to pair them with the opportunities according to what they want to do. They're flexible daytime opportunities, so if driving at night is a concern, it doesn't have to be an issue. So we provide them ways they can work with those who've suffered brain injuries. We can work with them, connecting them to people who maybe have intellectual disabilities, with children, with gardening, whatever their heart's desire is. We have volunteer opportunities to connect them personally to. And they really do enjoy it. And these are folks that they're not done giving back. They have a lot more to give, whether it's mentoring a child, whether it's instilling their knowledge, passing along to someone else that they can continue in that work. It's very refreshing and exciting to watch.
And I know, Steve, you've talked about this connection between the satisfied volunteer choosing the kind of volunteer activity that is most heartening to them. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, and that really we've sort of condensed into a slogan around the office. Volunteerism is personal, and we're kind of talking it up out there. We do events that promote volunteerism as well as offer a platform for it. And what we mean by that very simply is that if you, the volunteer, choose something, a volunteer activity that matches up with your personal passions, you're going to be the best possible volunteer. We know that. I know that intuitively. Being a volunteer for 50 years, I know from experience, having recruited, managed, and been a volunteer myself, that when I choose something that I'm passionate about, I stay longer, I come back, I tell my friends and bring them back. I'm the best possible volunteer. And so we are building on that by saying volunteerism is personal.
Very good. I think we kind of gone through the life cycle from the youngest volunteer to the most seasoned volunteer. Let's talk about the other aspect of Volunteer Fairfax, which is how nonprofits benefit from the services that you provide.
Sure. Nonprofits are, and there are hundreds of them that are our partners around the county and around the region. They benefit obviously because they're on the front lines of need. Whether a partner, for example, can be a food bank. It can be a shelter. It can be a organization that promotes early learning, getting a fresh start, getting a good start. Each of those obviously they're aware of need because they're sort of on the front lines of it. And so as we partner up with those nonprofits and they communicate to us where the needs exist that they are addressing, we can direct volunteer capacity towards that and satisfy their needs. So.
That's a great service.
Yeah.
Can you give us some specific examples of partners that you have or programs that you've been working on that have been successful?
Well, within Volunteer Fairfax, we have quite a number of programs that have been very successful. One of the ones is Volunteers for Change. We're celebrating our 25th year within this program. It's the oldest program of Volunteer Fairfax. What's unique about this program is it connects people who are really busy during the day. They're raising a family, they're working full time, they're going to school, but they're busy adults and they want to give back, but they just don't have time for a long-term commitment. And so many of our partners do have that because of the training that goes into these programs. But these volunteers still want to give in some way that will fit their schedule. So we connect them into those opportunities through a little hour here, a couple of hours there on evenings and weekends. It's very successful. We have about 1,500, 1,600 people that receive a newsletter every month. And the calendar that we provide them has about 50 to 60 opportunities, sometimes more depending on the season, of all these volunteer opportunities, whether it's food bank needs, whether it's working with children at the shelter. We also do animal adoptions. So we do all kinds of things to connect them in ways that expands the capacity for the nonprofit. This is stuff they just don't have the manpower to accomplish, but it also is fulfilling the needs of the volunteer. They're out there serving and feeling good about what they're doing.
And so examples of some of our partners are, we're partnered with all of the human service agencies in the county of Fairfax, obviously. And then we're partnered with, and we talked a little bit off camera about the fact that I'm going to start volunteering as a weekend foster parent for dogs from the Fairfax County Animal Shelter. So we're partnered with them. We're partnered with the Lamb Center, with various food banks, with the American Red Cross. Hundreds. We could spend an hour just telling you about how those.
And there's and so there's also training opportunities. Why don't you tell us about the CERT program and how that prepares our residents to react to natural disasters or other things that might occur?
The aspect of that program that we are particularly focusing on, and it's all about acronyms, so I'll throw another one out, which is CRGs, Community Resilience Groups, which are a part of this system. And the CRGs are intended to bring recovery assistance in the event of a disaster, natural or otherwise, that is based in and of the communities where these occur. And so it's a system that is sponsored by the county government and includes participants such as us, where we are building a system that is going to make our community more resilient. The definition of that being can easily bounce back from a disaster. That actually is the actual definition of the word resilient. And so our work to build the CRGs, the resiliency groups, are with the purpose of assuring that the neighborhoods that may be affected by a disaster are prepared to bounce back with whatever resources are necessary. We're in the middle of that.
Yes. And that's where we hold trainings where we'll engage the faith community, homeowners associations, civic groups, a lot of your other service organizations, Lions, Rotary, even your scouting troops. So we pull all these folks together and have them get to know each other and take this training and be able to respond together and know who to go to and what the resources that will be offered during an actual disaster would be.
Very good. Now, let's get to the nuts and bolts of how things are logistically executed at the Volunteer Fairfax organization. I know you've recently moved. You have some new facilities. Can you tell us about your facilities, your relationship with the county, perhaps a little about your board?
Yes, absolutely. We just moved into the Burkholder building, which is on the backside of the Massey complex, and we used to be in this cute little bungalow, and we moved from there late December. We're now well situated at the Burkholder building, where we're all co-located into one space, and we have all of the departments. Actually, it wasn't planned this way, we didn't build it this way, but all the departments fit very nicely into their own sections, and we have a big long central hallway that's like a bowling alley, but we congregate out there, and we also have a collaborative room where we get together and can relax and talk. So all of the departments now are housed in one place as opposed to on 3 floors. And you know, in a typical day, the way things operate is that we're, you know, half of us are in the field because of what we're doing, because we're out drumming up resources, finding opportunities to match those with need. Many of us are in the field a good part of the day, have a lot of meetings. So there's a lot of comings and goings. It's active.
And are your departments kind of broken up by programs, or is it age specific? How do you structure that?
Programs. My space, for instance, is for the court-ordered or community service piece, people who need community service for a court need or for an attorney referral for some pending court matter, reckless driving ticket, possession of marijuana, drunk in public, something very innocuous, very boring. But that's also where I do the Volunteers for Change work. That's where a lot of the youth piece comes into play. It's where we're developing our faith-based initiative that should be rolling out this year. Then we have across the hall and down a little bit, we have a little bit more of an executive office, HR, emergency response. Then we have our events team. They've got a nice nook in there, RSVP. We work our way back down to Steve's office and our front desk with some more administrative functions up front.
Yeah. Now, and you asked about the board. We have a board of 10 currently. We're on our way towards having a board of 16, which we view as the sweet spot. It's a variety of community leaders that cut across private sector, public sector, many different types of businesses, consulting, technology. It's really a snapshot representation of what Fairfax County looks like business-wise, and we are working to also make our board reflect the changing face of our community ethnically as well.
Well, Fairfax County has a kind of a mandate now for One Fairfax, and I'm sure every organization is thinking in terms of bringing in everyone from our community have equal representation, so it's good to know that you guys are working on that as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know that you have a particular interest in helping, you mentioned in the beginning of our discussion, you have a particular passion for helping individuals with disabilities, and I think you've got an effort that you're going to be pursuing there.
We are. We're going to be partnering with 2 or 3 nonprofit organizations throughout the county who have group homes whose residents have intellectual and developmental disabilities. We're going to then work with the area chambers of commerce to identify through their membership opportunities that are within a short walk or drive of these group facilities where we can offer more opportunities to volunteer for people with disabilities within their realm of abilities, which is broad and I think misunderstood and stigmatized sometimes. So there are a large number of people with disabilities in our county population of 1.1 million people, and it's an untapped resource, and it's a population who wants to volunteer, who wants to serve their community, who deserves to get the kind of feeling of self-worth and fulfillment that comes from doing a volunteer activity. We want to provide that.
Well, and volunteers are impacting the lives of others, and it's very important work. Before we came on camera, we talked a little bit about some personal experiences that we've had individually where volunteers made a difference in our lives. I, in particular, was the recipient of a kind of gift in the NICU when my son was ill, and there was a volunteer had crocheted a shawl for the mothers in the NICU and provided some gifts for the children. And just that simple act was, and it was anonymous, and it was just kind of there for the mothers, and that made such a difference in the moment for me. And in turn, I've volunteered following. I had always volunteered, but following that, knowing what it's like to be the recipient of that kind of an effort is terrific. And I know you each have your own stories.
Yeah, well, I mean, first I would say that, you know, we've been talking the whole time about finding volunteers with talent, but they all have a heart. And that really comes out when they volunteer. And so throughout the volunteering that I've done, I would have to say that it was more not my being the recipient of a volunteer's care so much as being with certain volunteers who really inspired me to do this as often as I could. And I have tons of stories about that, but that it's really being around people who think alike about how volunteerism can
Being
really
selfless.
exactly, and how it really strengthens your community. So.
I tell people in my orientations that when you go to serve on one of our short-term projects, you're choosing that project because it's something you care about, and you're going to be working with people who care about that same project that you're working on. One of the ones I love offering because it's so personal to me is with Ellie's Hats. And that's an organization that provides hats for children with cancer. And they also provide some experiential things for the family because they're surrounded in a time period where they're in hospital stays and doctor's offices and all kinds of appointments. And this comes from a personal experience on my part when my son had Hodgkin's disease when he was 7 years old. Being in those offices and the appointments and the tests and the procedures and all that, it's a very sterile kind of environment, and people will try to reach out to provide that love and support and the encouragement that you need when you're going through that time period. And I found that with Ellie's Hats. When we're packaging boxes of hats to send to children and their siblings, and actually even some to the parents, and they're going nationwide, in some cases worldwide. And when you see the pictures come back of a little boy or girl wearing the fuzzy fleecy hat that you packed for that child, not even knowing who that child is, that is very rewarding. And then when we're helping with some of the fundraiser events and we hear the stories about the families who are reached through that is a real serious heart tug. And it feels good to know that we're able to contribute and to provide that need that is out there.
Well, Volunteer Fairfax is doing fantastic work. I'm so pleased that you guys were able to come out and talk to me today
Thanks so
and
much.
share the good
Thank
word with
you.
all of our audience. If people want to learn more, they can go to the website, volunteerfairfax.org. They can go on there and they can click on that tab to fill out a profile and learn more about the organization and get involved.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you,
Kim.
Jennifer.
That's
Thank you,
wonderful.
Jennifer.
Appreciate it.
And thank you for watching On the Go with AAUW.